Hi guys, this is Debbie with Debbie J's Crafting Corner. Today I'll show you how to make this cool Eclipse card for Halloween. I'll be using the Boo stamp and die set from Pretty Pink Posh for my Eclipse cards today. Okay, technically my cards may not be Eclipse cards since I'll be adding some stamping and embossing to the cutout letters, but I couldn't help but add color to this gray and white pattern paper that I'm using. Yep, another page gone from my Ghost Story paper pack. I started off by cutting the Boo from the center of a large scrap of this pattern paper. I used the rest of the page to make some more of those witchy pop-up sliders. I just lined it up and tacked it in place with some low tack washi tape and ran it through my Gemini Junior. I popped the letters out, being careful not to let the washi tape rip the paper. Be sure to test your washi before doing this technique since you want to use both the positive and negative space. I have had washi tape rip my paper when I tried to take the dies off before. Next, I ran a piece of fun foam through my Gemini Junior using that same die. Now I'll do some stamping. I took the negative space from my die cutting and placed it into my Tim Holtz stamp platform. This will work in the MISTI as well, but this is the stamping tool that I have. Next, I'll use the empty spaces to help me line up the stamps so they will be perfectly positioned onto the die cut letters. I'm using a removable adhesive runner from Tombow to hold my die cuts in place. This paper is a bit thinner than regular cardstock, so the letters kept shifting. This solved that problem. I removed the negative space to prevent any excess ink from getting on that part of the panel, just in case my stamps aren't lined up as perfectly as I think they are. I'm using Catherine Pooler's Grass Skirt ink for the stamping on this card. There is one portion of one stamp that isn't stamping so well, so I added a piece of foam under the panel. Not sure if that was a good idea or not. It did help with getting a better impression, but the stamp shifted slightly in the process and I wasn't going to start over. Next, I'm embossing all of the letters. Another thing that removable adhesive is helping with is that I can emboss all of these at the same time. What a time saver! I wish I had thought of that on the card I did earlier. I'm using Wow Clear embossing powder over the green Grass Skirt ink. Don't you just love the way that embossed images just come to light when they get hit with a heat gun? I decided to double emboss my still warm die cut images by covering them with some more embossing powder. Now this works as long as your embossing hasn't had too much time to cool off. Otherwise, just re-stamp it with some embossing ink and then add your powder. After removing the letters, I need to get the matting layer ready. I don't have any cardstock in this shade of green, so I'll make my own. I'm using the ink to paper technique with my ink pad. I think that all of my Catherine Pooler ink pads are getting a little bit too much use and really need to be re-inked or replaced. The green, though, is a little streaky, but I think it looks great for this card. I just inked the edges of the panel. Now I'll assemble the card panel. I'm adhering the negative space to the center of my matte piece with my Dotliner adhesive. Then I'm gluing the foam letters to the back of the stamped letters with art glitter glue. I used a stamp block to hold each of the letters flat while the glue dried. The next step is to adhere the letters in place. I'm using art glitter glue again for this. And don't forget those little pieces that came out of the holes. They need to go in too. I'm using my Marvy jewel picker for this. Now these pieces are probably not really small enough for this to help much. I think I should have used my reverse tweezers and it would have worked better. I'm using that stamp block again to hold the letters flat as the glue dries. Next, I'm stamping a sub-sentiment for this card. First, I'll position the Happy Halloween to You stamp from this set into my stamp platform along with a scrap of black cardstock. I'll be creating a couple of strips with this just in case one of them doesn't turn out right, and I'm stamping with Wow embossing ink. And don't forget to use your powder tool. Most of the time I use Wow embossing powder, which doesn't have as much static cling as long as you keep it stored in their jars, so it doesn't stick as much where you don't want it to. But for these sentiment strips, I'm using some Recollections white embossing powder that I already had in my stash, because I want these sentiments to be bright white. I'm also trying to be very gentle when I stamp the sentiment. I tend to be pretty heavy-handed, and lots of times my sentiment stamping comes out, I guess, smushed, because I just use too much pressure. I'm using a tip that I saw on a video from Christina Werner: light pressure and double or triple stamping. Then I'm shifting my sentiment strip up a little bit and doing the second one before I do the embossing. And I'm going to use my EK Success reverse tweezers to hold on to that sentiment strip. And it looks like my stamping came out pretty good. Now let's heat things up a bit. I'm holding the sentiment strips on a cutting board from the Dollar Tree for stability and heating the embossing powder with this embossing tool from Marvy. I just love the way that the white embossing powder brightens up so much as it's heated. And now I'll trim those sentiment strips down using my Fiskars paper trimmer. I decided to attempt cutting fishtail ends on the end of the strip, with limited success. It would work much better if you can see where you are cutting. I should have placed something light colored on my black Tonic media mat behind where I was cutting, since the cardstock, of course, is black too. At first I thought I'd place that sentiment strip below the big boo. I'm putting some art glitter glue on the back, and then at the last second I changed my mind and positioned it to be on the boo sentiment, but in that lower right hand corner. Now I need to add it to a card base. I'm using half of a sheet of Michael's 300 GSM heavyweight cardstock that measures 8.5 by 5.5 and scoring at 4 1/4. Then I'll flip it over and so that the score is facing out and fold on the score. This makes the card much less likely to crack on that fold. Before adding the panel to the front of this card base, I'll trim it down just enough so that a little bit of white shows at the top and bottom of the card. Next, I'm using my Dotliner tape runner to adhere the panel to the front of the card base. Sometimes it's a little difficult to line up the panel perfectly, so I'm using a trick that I learned from Kathy Zilski. Use your scoreboard to line it up. This works great and is so quick and easy. The last part I'm doing on this card is just adding a little bit of embellishment to the front using some little black bat sequins and some black sequins and a few little gems. I'm gluing everything down using my art glitter glue. That that finishes up this card for today. I hope that you are inspired to get going on your Halloween crafting, and I would love to see what you create. So come join my Facebook group, Crafting with Debbie, and show us your creations. I've left a link in the description box down below. Oh, and if you make anything using ideas from one of my Halloween videos, please post a picture and tag me at hashtag Debbie J's Crafting Corner and at hashtag DJCC Halloween 2020. You can also see all of my Halloween videos for 2020 by clicking on the hashtag DJCC Halloween 2020 down in the video title. Here are some other videos that you may be interested in. Thank you so much for dropping by, and remember, if I can make it, you can too.